Good morning, my Teaserking family. Apologize I wasn't on yesterday. I had a busy day. As you can see, I got the haircut, getting ready for my trip. Had some other things that I had to take care of, so I will do 2 shows today. One on college, one on pro to get everybody caught up. How's that sound? So far this week, I've hit the Bowling Green game. I don't like playing too many of these early games because the teams are off schedule, right? The Tuesday, the Wednesday, Thursday, okay. Tonight, there's a game. I'm playing 2 games tonight, and then we'll get into Saturday. So 4 good locks going. I was afraid of a tornado in the Oklahoma-Kansas area, and I've been watching the line, and I checked the weather service, so I'm not seeing it. So unless we see a really big drop in Oklahoma, Kansas area, then I'm not going to worry about it. Anyway, so that's, again, it's good to watch the weather, and those hurricanes, tornadoes are really good. Just a second. Sending to my girlfriend. All right, enough of that. So, anytime the teams get off schedule, like I hate the London trips in the NFL because it fucks the team up for that game and the next game unless they're off, just because of all the extra travel. Now they're used to traveling a little bit. This West Coast goes to East Coast goes to West Coast, so it does make it difficult. But when you go all the way to London, now it's a longer flight, and I'm going to Europe, and I know when I go there, you're tired that first day. It takes a couple days to get used to, the time difference because you're going. It's a 5-6 hour time difference, so you got to take that into consideration. Anyway, so as I've been analyzing it, I've got 6 locks going in college, and again, I don't lock the lock. I'm not trying to do anything by just looking at a game going, yeah, I love this game. This is the numbers right? So if the number's right, I apologize. I got a bit of a cold or something today. I keep sneezing. So I am taking my tea. My apologies. So I got my tea with my honey, my cinnamon, and my ginger in it. And, of course, lemon. So all that's supposed to help. All right. So 6 locks today. I got 1 in the pros. I can look at a game and lock it, or I'll give you the free game. You can just look at it. It's the right point spread. It's the right teams. Are they over? Are they under? Is one better? And then you go from there. So we're going to break down the games, of course, and I'll walk you through them. So first, let's go through the line, which I think is the best place to start. So I'm on scores and odds. All right, we got Duke. Went from 9.5 to 10.5. This is tonight. We've got UMass and UConn. Oh my God, what kind of game is this? This is W against Z. UConn's minus 15.5, over under 40.5, hasn't changed. The Duke's gone from 47 to 48.5. So money's going on Duke. So I would assume somebody from Duke's playing, which is all right. I've already bet the game. Oregon State, Washington, very interesting game. This line's 4.5, 54.5, hasn't moved. Now, Oregon State, I know Chase Nolan's out, but the backup's been playing fine. So, it's not like it's his first game. He's played 2 or 3 games. They scored on somebody last week. I don't know if it was like Colorado or somebody weak, but they put up 42. So they'll be in the game, and we know how Washington is. Army and Air Force. We got the Air Force, and the game's at Air Force. I thought the game was at Army. Not that that really matters. The line is 7.5, 40.5. North Carolina, Virginia. We've got North Carolina's 7.5 up from 7. Over under went from 58 to 60. So there's money on the over, which I'm a little confused because Virginia doesn't score, right? So if they don't score, how are you going to get 60? Everybody thinks North Carolina, because of that App State, is this huge over team, and they're really not. They don't. They score some. They put up 42 on Pitt, but it was close, and then they finally win. I think North Carolina is a very good team this year. Iowa, Purdue. We've got Purdue laying 3.5, down from 4.5. Over under 38.5. Which it's Iowa, so I get it. Purdue. Now, this is not the ideal under that you would think it is because it's Iowa. Because Purdue can score points, and Iowa, I don't know. Purdue doesn't have that great defense. I would be better in an Iowa, Illinois, where both teams have strong defenses. And that's what I like in an under game. Or conversely, an over game when both teams, big offenses, like Oregon, big offense, not that great of a defense. So both teams can score because as we saw from UCLA last week or the week before, we took them over, and it was 35-13 against Stanford because Stanford didn't light it up and couldn't take advantage of UCLA's kind of weak defense against good offenses. So you really want to have both teams. You can't just one team it. So when you have both teams, it's different. Minnesota, Nebraska. We got Minnesota laying 15.5, hasn't moved. The under went down from 46 to 44. Minnesota, pretty strong defense. Nebraska's really just a weak team this year. If you took the name away, you could replace them with Northwestern or Rutgers, and it would be about the same. So, yeah, an under is probably decent there. Maryland, Wisconsin. Wisconsin 4.5, 48.5. The unders the line went from 50 to 48.5. Kentucky 1.5. Where's Kentucky? 1.5. That stayed 40.5 from 41.5. So that did go a little. This is a prime under game in the fact that both teams have good defenses and both teams don't score a lot. So this is what you're looking for in an under, better than the Iowa game, 40.5. Ohio State, 38.5, up from 37, 55.5, down from 57. So here's a game I'm talking about. You got Ohio State, they're going to score a lot of points, and they have a fairly good defense, but they're going against Northwestern. And Northwestern probably won't score too much, maybe 10. So it makes it where you would think, well, I'll bet over it's Ohio State. You don't get any points from the other side. If Ohio State, the one reason I locked them in the Rose Bowl last year, they were playing Utah and Rising, and I know they weren't going to stop Rising. You just don't stop that guy. So that was a lock over because it was like in the 60s, which was at halftime. The game was over at halftime. I think they put up 60 points at the half and ended with 100. That's what you're looking for is Ohio State, Utah to go over, Ohio State, USC to go over, Ohio State, UCLA, Oak State, Baylor, TCU. Ohio State TCU at 55 would be a 100-unit lock because you ain't stopping TCU at Ohio State. Neither of them you're going to stop. Neither of them really have that great of a defense to, Georgia's the only team I probably won't fuck with going playing, like an over on, because with that defense, they can shut down and have shut down Alabama and Tennessee. We'll get into that game. I'm going to make that our free game today, the Georgia-Tennessee game, because I know everybody likes it. Well, I know everybody wants to hear about it, so we're gonna talk about that. So here you have this strong team, Ohio State. The problem is Northwestern won't score for you. Can you go over? It's hard, but then do you lay 38 with Ohio State because they're going to score, but Northwestern won't? And this is the correlation I have sometimes where is this team going to score enough for me to go over? I don't know. So is Ohio State going to beat them 45-0 where they won't get over, but they'll cover? Or, well, I'm worried that Northwestern scores 20 points and they won't cover the 38. Then I can go over. And that's usually my dilemma when it's not clear cut. So sometimes I have two options. The over and under looks really good and the team looks really good. And then I'm debating, will the other team score enough to go over, or will they ruin the spread, right? So will Northwestern ruin the 38? That's the first question. And if I think they can score enough, then it's an over because Ohio State will put up 40. So if I think I can get 14, or do I think, are they going to hold Ohio State? No way. Ohio State, they're still pissed off from last year to make the playoff. They are not losing this game. See, you won't get the letdown from Ohio State because they didn't get in the playoff. Michigan's more apt to let down because they got to the playoff and they switched quarterbacks, so they're not as good as they were last year. So that's the thing. I don't know what the hell that is. All right. So that's how you figure out, do I go Ohio State or do I go over? Now with better teams, if this is the Michigan line, I still don't know because of Michigan's defense and the fact they can't throw the ball. I'm not sure I go over 55 there, but I think Ohio State gets you over 55. There's where you play the line, and that's where I'm hoping Ohio State 7 over Michigan. It's a lock -1. That's different. But I don't know that Michigan scored. They're not a high-scoring team. All right. Western Kentucky, 15, down from 16 and 72.5. That hasn't really – the line really hasn't moved. Again, Western Kentucky, they keep making them 72 for some reason, and they're really not – they've been 72 or three times this year, and none of them have gone much past 60. So UTSA was in the 50s, and last week was in the 50s or low 60s. So I don't really get. They haven't figured out, they being Vegas, that Western Kentucky really. I mean, this is ridiculous. I mean, Charlotte has no defense, but Western Kentucky is not. They're actually playing a good defense. I think they've changed a little bit where they're a much better defensive team than you normally get. And Charlotte really has a weak defense here. This is almost Western Kentucky. It's almost Western Kentucky -9, but Charlotte does have a good offense. So you got to be careful with this one. But I don't see over 72. Western Kentucky is not like with Zappy where he put up 50. They don't obviously have a Zappy, so you think it's the system. It's clearly not. It's definitely the quarterback, and you don't always get the great quarterback. So that's what I'm looking at. All right. Florida and A&M. We've got A&M -3.5 and 55.5. That number hasn't changed. Tulsa Tulane. We got Tulane -7.5, 57.5. That number hasn't changed. TCU T-Tech. TCU's down to 8.5 from 9.5. and 69.5 from 69. And I don't know, TCU got, I don't know if they're going to light it up here. We'll see. Georgia Tech, Virginia Tech, it's VTech 2.5 and 40.5, down from 3.5 and 40. Temple, South Florida, we've got South Florida minus 3.5 and 50.5. Talk about a team that shouldn't be favored. That's South Florida. I don't, as bad as Temple is, I still don't get South Florida's favorite in this game. Marshall, Old D, we got Marshall 2.5 and 46.5. That's about right. Baylor, Oklahoma. Oklahoma's 3.5 and over, and the total 61.5. It started at 57, and then it went up to 61 and 61.5. Now, this is one of those, maybe there's a tornado flying through Oklahoma, Kansas, but I'm not seeing the line actually get up. I don't see that there's a tornado. People are worried. If you see this go back to 57 tomorrow, then yeah, there's probably a tornado hitting it. But I think they would have already adjusted it or taken it off. So I don't think I'm worried about a tornado in this game. Lou Tech, Middle Tennessee, or Louisiana Tech. Middle Tennessee's minus 2.5 and 63.5. Okay. And Southern Miss 2.5, 48.5 against Georgia State. And that line did go. The over went from 50 to 48.5. Penn State 13.5, 49.5. 13.5. Now the over went from 53 to 49.5. So in my mind, there's an injury somewhere. It looks like it's on Indiana because the line hasn't moved. So if Penn State lost their quarterback, the line would move down. But clearly that's not the case. Are they really betting this game under 4 points? Or, that's a lot of money to move it down to 49.5. I don't know. I don't think I'd bet this game under at all. Pitt and Syracuse. Pitt's 3.5. I just saw it. Okay, Pitt 3.5, 48.5. The under again moved from 50 to 48. So maybe this is Pitt. That's Indiana. I was going to say that's Penn State. They're both Pennsylvania, but one's Indiana, one's Pitt. So I don't know if it's a weather thing. I'm in Detroit. It's sunny, so I'm not hearing about weather. It's sunny and calm. So 48. Pitt and Syracuse. Syracuse has looked kind of bad the last few weeks. They did play Clemson really well, and then really the Notre Dame game was very misleading. It was 2 block punts by Notre Dame and a couple of interceptions, and the quarterback got hurt. So the Syracuse quarterback, maybe that's what's going on here. He's maybe not playing, so that would move the line down. The backup sucks, at least what I saw. All right, the Kansas Oak State game, the other game I was referring to in the tornado area, we've got Kansas. Wow, Kansas went to 1.5. And over under 63.5. It started at 68, and then it's been pretty steady at 64. I don't really see I see a receiver out for Oak State, but nothing. Spencer Sanders is fine. So I don't really know, why the money is going on Kansas. Makes me like Oak State. I mean, Kansas get up. They score and they give up a lot of points. And Oak State, I was shocked they were shut out last week. I mean, I'm looking at the last 3 games, 40, 40, 40, 40, TCU, Texas, so I'm like, what the hell? They play camp, okay, but I can't imagine that all of a sudden they can't score. So I'm a little surprised by this line. Again, the only injuries I'm seeing is to the wide receiver, who was the same guy who was supposedly injured who played last week. So, again, they're just questionable. So I'm really kind of surprised by this turn of events. I'll have to rethink this game. Michigan State, Illinois. Now, Michigan State had the trouble in the tunnel last week against Michigan, and they suspended 8 defensive players. So it was the defense. The kid apparently hit a Michigan guy with the helmet. He should be in jail because if you get hit in the helmet during the game and that helmet stuff, okay, that's part of the game, and I get that. But if you take your helmet off and you swing it in a tunnel at some guy, now you're talking about a whole different. No, that's an assault, and that kid should be prosecuted. That's not part of the game, and that there's no place for it. If the coach should throw him off the team because this guy is not. That you cross the line when you take your helmet off and you hit somebody with your helmet in a tunnel. Okay, that's not on the field. There's on the field and off the field. This is off the field. So when I heard that, that's ridiculous. So we got Illinois 16.5, 40.5. Now here's the problem. Initially, this is a great under, but as I said, because Michigan State's lost 8 defensive players, and I don't know if they're starters or backup, they weren't that good of a defense anyway, makes it hard to. This game started Illinois 8.5, went up to 16.5. So Illinois is going to score on them. You lost at least your starters or second and third string. You lost your depth. So the problem with under in this game, which I like it initially, is can Michigan State actually stop Illinois? And Michigan State's got a good quarterback and receivers and put up 20 on Ohio State, so they should be able to score a little on Illinois. Illinois's got a great defense. They're the number 1 defense in the country, I think 5 or 6 points a game. So Illinois is going to win the game. But with Michigan State's defense being suspended, 8 guys, and it's linebackers and secondary, are they going to stop Illinois? So you can see, do I lay the 16.5 or go down to 10.5? Or do I look at the over-under? And this is the dichotomy that you try to figure out. This is the figure out part of the game, right? We're trying to figure out how this game's going to go. And it's almost, do I lay 10.5 with Illinois because they're going to go up and down the field on Michigan State if they got 8 guys out? Illinois is not bad. They got a really good running back. They got an exceptional defense. Just think about this as Wisconsin. This is what I think the guy tried to do at Arkansas, Bielema, but he never got there. Now this is basically Wisconsin, and so it's in Illinois. I look for them to go up and down the field on them, and they can score. How do you pick the final score? I think Illinois could honestly get into the 30s in this game. And Michigan State has Peyton and can definitely throw the ball and move. Illinois' defense isn't Georgia's, after all. So this is an interesting game, but if they didn't get suspended, I could have seen it playing this game under. But with the suspension, Illinois should score a lot. It's almost an Illinois play. So we'll get into that when we start going. All right. Interesting one here. Oregon, 31.5, 62.5 up from 61. Now, for you money line players, anybody that would do that has to, here's the problem with it. The money line on Oregon is $30,000 to win 100. $30,000 to win 100. It's a sure bet. But how many people have $30,000 out there to win 100? And my advice would be, if I had $30,000, it's all in gold. I mean, that's where it's getting to. Instead of putting it in to win 100, I could put 30,000 on gold and win $1 million. 30,000 would buy you approximately 16 ounces of gold, which will turn into $1 million as soon as they reset and gold hits a $50,000 price. Why would I risk 30,000 to win 100? Now, here's where I warned you about money lines. But if you took Colorado, you think, well, I'll get 30,000 or 20,000. No, you get 5,000. If you bet 100, you win only 5, but you got to risk 30. That's why I don't like money lines, because it's bullshit. Look at the odds. How can it be 30,000 on one side and 5 on the other? So you're telling me I got to lay 30,000 to win 100 on Oregon, but if I had the balls to bet Colorado, a 31-point dog, and they win, I only get 5,000? I mean, for a 30-point dog, you only get 5, but you have to lay 30. This is the problem with money lines. This is why I tell you never to play money line. It's freaking ridiculous. I don't really get it. If anybody's trying to leave message, I'm not seeing anything, but I do see my Teaserking on the bottom, but it looks a little different. So, let me see a message so I know that's working. But I'm gonna do this, and then I'll come back and do the pros. So, anyway, I don't see anything, so I apologize if you're leaving me a message and I can't read it. So again, that's the problem with money lines. They're not fair. They're not even. I mean, it should be if it's 3, like a regular bet's 110, right? If I bet a regular bet, I bet Oregon minus 31.5. I bet 110 to win 100. And if I take Colorado, I bet 110 to win 100 either way. It's the same odds, and then it's just a difference of laying the 31 or that, but it doesn't really matter. It's not going to impact my my betting. But the money line, Oregon and the money line, that's a sure bet. But to put 30,000 to win 100, go buy gold with the 30,000. So if you're thinking of that, all right, let's move on. Washington State 4.5, 48.5. That moved down from 51. Definitely an underplay there with these. Stanford played Notre Dame 15-14. Washington State plays everybody. Great defense, so I can understand that line going down. Okay, game of the week: Georgia, Tennessee. Georgia 8.5, 66.5. All right, this is going to be our free pick. And I will get into that once I'm done with the lines. We will go to this game first. I'm going to break it down for you. Really good. All right, UCF, Memphis, UCF 3.5, 58.5, down from 60. I got a question on the UCF quarterback. I think it's Keene. No, it's Plumlee, and he's questionable. I think this is a very live dog here because UCF runs a lot, but Memphis can score, so we'll see. West Virginia, Iowa State. We've got Iowa State 7.5, 49.5, down from 50.5. And again, we love Iowa State as an under. They held Oklahoma, they held Texas. That was the free play last week. Excuse me. Was the Iowa State Oklahoma under, and it wasn't close. And I'm out of Kleenex. So. Off to the paper. Nothing like a cold that won't stop. And the funny part is, I went to bed. I didn't have a cold. I love when you wake up with a cold. Like, where did I get it? I was in bed. It's like, how am I going to get a cold from that? All right. Utah State 14.5, 42.5, down from 16.5, and 42.5 is where it was. Utah State, New Mexico's got a very good defense. I'll be shocked if this game goes over. UTSA, UAB. Now, this has been even all week. It's kind of a strange even. I like the dog, but I'm not getting a dog. And over under 51.5, 52. So that hasn't changed. This is a very live dog. UAB's a very good team. UTSA's been more of an over team, usually an A team. So they're not as strong without the running back. They haven't replaced him yet. But UT, they're both two strong teams here. I want the dog. Give me a dog. All right, Cincinnati down from 20.5, 18.5, and 44.5, down from 46.5. I have the Navy quarterback out, which would definitely make it an under, but why would the line on Cincinnati go from 20 to 18.5? Makes really no sense. Navy's been playing over ball, but the quarterback is a good thrower, is out. He's gone. So this is a really confusing line movement that Cincy would go down, but the over-under 44.5 makes sense. Cincy with the really good defense. I'm not sure Navy doesn't have that great defense. And where they've been over passing the ball, they've lost their quarterback. So I'm not crazy about that. Arkansas 14.5, 61.5. I looked at this game and I thought, well, I'm going to take Arkansas. And then I looked at Liberty and they beat BYU 42-10 or something like that. And I go, oh, maybe I'm not all over Arkansas in this game. We'll get more into that. Florida International in North Texas. We go to page 2. We've got North Texas 21.5 up from 20.5 and 62.5. Jesus Christ. I apologize. I'll have to take a sauna and a hot tub at the club. Get rid of this, I think. That's probably where I got it, was in the hot tub. North Texas, strong team, over, and Florida International's a Z team with no defense. So this is one of those games you think North Texas is going to get. Hey, Todd, there you go. All right. You need a little shot of Crown Royal. No. It's Canadian Club. Do you want to watch Coastal Carolina? McCall was balling. Well, that's what I expect from McCall. Their problem's been the running backs have been out. But no, I didn't see the game. I'll watch it on YouTube. They have the little 15, 20-minute capsule of the game. They show all the highlights quarter by quarter. So you basically are seeing the plays for 20 minutes. What kills me is when they show the replay and or they show, like, if there's a targeting call. Like, I don't need to see what happened and what did the refs think or the celebration. In the NFL, I really hate that. I don't like the celebration when they all go row a boat in the end zone. Like, okay, dude, I don't like it, but I certainly don't need to see it and waste time on a highlight show. Here's 20 minutes of Buffalo, Kansas City. I don't need to see the end zone celebration in it. Just show the freaking plays. Anyway, so no, and did I play the game? No, I left the game over. I think it did go over, but I didn't play it. Because App State's really an over team, and Coastal Care we know is an over team. So it made sense when you got a McCall and you got a Bryce on the other side. You've got two good quarterbacks. You can get that's critical for the over. Is all your plays teasers? I talk about teasers because that's what I do. But what's your question? Do you want to play a game straight? I can give you a teaser and play it straight. Can't stand the celebration, especially on defense when they run the whole length of the field. Well, and then you wonder why they're tired in the fourth quarter. You're using up energy in football that you just don't have a lot of, and you're tired by the fourth quarter and you're dicking around, or you made a sack. Act like you made a sack before. No, they're all like so excited. And that's my point. Like dudes, act like you've been Barry Sanders, hand the ball to Ralph. That's it. Didn't spike it, didn't do anything. These guys act like, they just won $1 million or something in a lottery with doing that. All right, let me finish this part off. Georgia Southern, South Alabama. Where is that? Or is back on page 1? Yeah, it's the end of page 1. South Alabama, 3.5, 60.5 hasn't moved. That line's the same. It's a good game. South Alabama's the A team. And then Georgia Southern, we've been playing a lot. The one that beat Nebraska. They're now known as the team that beat Nebraska. Troy, 3.5, down from 5.5, or I wrote it poorly, and 43.5 over under. So Troy, a little bit of money on Lou Lafayette. Troy's a very strong under team, 43.5. Texas State, Lou Monroe. Lou Monroe actually is favored. Hard to believe that. Yeah. 1.5, 52.5. That under actually went up somehow from 51.5, 52.5. Texas State is a very good under team, not to be confused with North Texas, who's a very good over team. And so that's why you got to know the teams. Lou Monroe is kind of a W. They did beat Lou Lafayette. They played a little bit better. They have a weak defense. I'm kind of surprised Lou Monroe's favorite in the game, but it's at home, I guess. All right, Texas, Kansas State. Texas is a 2.5-point favorite, 54.5. Why is Texas favored in this game? Did we not see Kansas State beat Oak State, a team a lot better than Texas, 49-0? I mean, hello, McFly, anybody home? I mean, why is Texas favored in this game? And then the over-under is only 54.5. Why is that low? But based on looking at Kansas, they're not tornadoing it. This game hasn't really – it started at 56, been 54. I've written at 54 on Tuesday. It's still 54. So it hasn't really – it's not tornado. It's to me – now, Kansas State has a pretty good defense. Obviously, shut out Oak State, but they're not that good. Texas will score. They have a good offense. This is over under 48.5, really. But why is Texas favored? Clearly, Kansas State shut out Oak State. Are you kidding me? So I have the wrong team favored here. This Kansas State, I have 7-point favorites. They're getting 2.5, really. BYU, Boise 7.5, and 54.5. And I can see this is going to be a very interesting show with me sneezing all the time. All right. I apologize for that, but a lot I can do. All right. So Boise, 7.5, 54.5, really hasn't changed. BYU's, on one hand, they beat Baylor, then they look like shit. They lose close to Notre Dame, and then they get killed. So I don't know. Kobe, I have Dolphins money line with Saints plus 9.5 at -10. That doesn't make any sense. You have the money line, or are you getting 9.5 at -10? Sorry, Kobe. I need more definition on what it is you're talking about, please. Houston and SMU, two explosive teams. The SMU quarterback is back, Mordecai. The line's 3 and 65.5. And that's really, it's 3.5, so it went down to 3. This should be very explosive. This is this game should be over at halftime. Both explosive, and neither really has a defense, so it should just be up and down the field, scoring. Just what we like in an over bet. But you got two strong offenses they also have weak defenses. So the strong offense it is just going to be touchdown. And that's what we like versus the UCLA Stanford game when Stanford didn't put up their 30. And UCLA only got 38. They were running the ball a lot. So that was the difference. But if UCLA would have scored, then it makes if Stanford would have scored more, it would have made UCLA score more. That's why you need a close game. Alabama, LSU. Alabama is 13.5, up from 12.5, and 56.5. What's wrong with this line? Anybody? So we know Alabama scores a ton, and the defense looks like shit this year, giving up the 52 to Tennessee and having a hard time with Texas A&M. So, not sure. LSU has a running quarterback, which gives Alabama problems. LSU's defense hasn't really been playing well. Alabama laying 13.5 in Death Valley on a Saturday night is going to be interesting. Alabama cannot afford to lose. They've lost, so they're going to be pissed. LSU plays them well. They play them every year. They're not scared of them. They have the athletes. They have the coach. This would be a very interesting game. 13.5, I think, is way too much in this game. My line was Alabama -7. You're going to be kidding me. LSU's not that bad. They're a little bit – they got killed by Tennessee, and then they beat Old Mississippi and Old Mississippi State. So, let's see. They got killed by Tennessee. LSU, do they pass? But their defense is not that strong, Alabama's. Statistically, it is, but – not in the games where they played good offenses. They really had a hard time. Vegas, San Diego State. We got San Diego State 6.5, 47.5. Line hasn't moved. Michigan 25.5, 44.5. Line hasn't moved. Half point here or there. Miami, Florida State. Very interesting game here. Florida State 7.5, 53.5, and guess who's playing? That's right, Van Dyke. So I got Miami -3 with Van Dyke at home. Florida State 7.5, like they knew Van Dyke was playing the whole time. 53.5. I just said thank you. I got Van Dyke. I mean, you just take Miami. I mean, Jesus. Miami's been playing well defensively. They're both under. Florida State's a B team. Miami's an E. But you got Van Dyke back, and they're at home, and they're a home dog. And we know Miami with Van Dyke is a whole different team. So, loving the dog there. James Madison, Louisville. Louisville -7.5, 52.5. Hasn't moved. Arizona, Utah. I am waiting on Rising. I looked at the injuries last night, and I didn't see any. I'm looking at the line. I'm not seeing it move. It was 17.5 from 16.5 yesterday. Over under 67. Hasn't moved. So I don't know what the hell. Rising's listed as questionable. Hurt his leg apparently in the USC game. At least now it's listing him as questionable. The running back, Thomas, is also listed as questionable. He didn't play last week. And the tight end hurt his shoulder going for a touchdown last week. So you got a lot of good injuries. Screwing this this is a lock over if they're healthy to now, well, is Rising playing? Now, where last week I had to we didn't know. We got away with it, but we didn't know at game time it wasn't listed. Now at least we know he's questionable. We just don't bet it. This is what we normally do. Or I should say I normally do when there's that injury out there. Like now I know Van Dyke's playing, I can play Miami. I still don't know about Rising. I won't play Utah until I know. Now, I don't know what the line's going to do. I guess this is baked in. He's playing because 17.5 at 67 is with Rising. Without him, I don't know that they beat Arizona by 17.5 with the backup. I mean, Arizona can score. Now, as far as the over, again, without Rising, I can't play it over. So that's the key. So we'll see. We got to look at – hopefully we get some line movement. I don't know what to think. I think this is baked in with Rising. How can it 67.5 not be baked in with Rising playing? So if he plays, I don't think we'll see the line move. I think if he doesn't play, we'll see it go down to 15 and 63 or something, and then we'll know he's not playing. Vanderbilt, where are they? Vanderbilt, South Carolina 6.5, 48.5, moved down from 49.5. I'm not sure this is an under game. Auburn, Mississippi State 12.5, 50.5, down from 13.5, and down from 52 to 50.5. So a little movement on the under and on Auburn. Clemson, Notre Dame, very interesting game. Clemson 3.5, 44.5. I really like Clemson here. They went into Florida State, won. They beat Wake. Notre Dame hasn't. See, you can't overvalue last week's win at Syracuse. Like, oh, look at explode. They got 2 block punts and an interception at like the 30-yard line. So that was 21 of their points were gifts. The offense didn't drive down. They still don't have a good eye, and they're not going to move on Clemson, who's got a very good defense. So I think I like Clemson here. I don't see taking Notre Dame against this defense, and I think he switches quarterbacks from Ugliabli to the other guy who's 20 times better. Again, I'm not understanding why he keeps starting Ugliabli. He's terrible. Everybody knows he's terrible. Everybody knows when the new guy comes in, they light it up. So I that's my safety valve here. So I like Clemson, and at worst case, Ugliabli does good and fine. And if he's not, or they're behind, they bring in the backup, and boom, boom, boom. So not only that, but you get 2.5 with Clemson in a game that they're going to win. Going to Notre Dame, Ira Parseghian isn't there right now. So, and Joe Montana is not there. All right, so we definitely like Clemson there. Wake, 3.5, 54.5. Down from 5. I assume Wake's kind of pissed about getting killed last week with all the turnovers against Louisville. But they're at NC State, who doesn't have their quarterback but has a very strong defense. So this is a game where I stay away from. I don't want to bet Hartman against a good defense. I want to bet him against a bad defense. Louisville had a good defense. 8 turnovers later, they get killed. Well, NC State's got a great defense, as did Clemson. He lit up Clemson pretty good. But after what happened with Louisville, I think he's probably pissed off and probably won't happen again. But I don't know. This is not a game I want to play Hartman in. There's other games that I'll play Hartman. But this one, I think they win because NC State really doesn't have a quarterback. I think NC State's going to run the ball a lot. It's probably an under based on NC State trying to keep the ball away from Hartman, run, and they don't have a quarterback, or their backup's okay, but he's not. Leary. So very interesting game here. San Jose State, 24.5 against 44 and 44.5 against Colorado State. Colorado State's a Z team. Even San Jose State should be able to beat them, but they haven't been scoring. It's actually probably an under unless San Jose State finally finds an offense. I don't know. Fresno State, 27.5, 63.5. Fresno up from 24. A lot of movement in this game. 63.5 up from 58. So a ton of money going on Fresno and going on the over. So I don't really understand that, because unless I didn't think Fresno's quarterback's all that good anyway, or Hayner's great, but Hayner's out with the broken ankle. So Hayner's not playing, so I don't get the line movement here. USC 21.5, 60.5, up from 59. Cal at home played Washington 28-21. Then Oregon lit them up 42-24. That's at home, and now they're at USC. So now they're on the road, and USC has the loss to Utah, can't lose again. They got UCLA coming up in 2 weeks, so look for USC to roll here. I don't think Cal's just played Washington, and they just played Oregon. They just played USC twice and won. The Washington game was pretty close, but not the Oregon game. The Oregon put up their 40, and USC will put up their 50. And I don't think Cal could keep with them. 21, you're laying 15, probably be in that neighborhood. I could see a 20-point win, would not surprise me, maybe a little bit more. But this is something Cal's seen the last 2 weeks. And last but not least, UCLA, Arizona State. UCLA 10.5. That line hasn't moved. 66.5. That line moved from 61, but hasn't. Once it hit 66.5, it stayed at 66.5. UCLA is not going to let us down this week where they played Stanford. Arizona State can score and has no defense. Stanford's more, what do we got Stanford as? Stanford's an even two, so they don't score that much in an over defense where Arizona State scores a lot. And that's really the key. We need Arizona State to score to get to the over of 66. We know UCLA will. And that is it. Let's look at the final. So we've got Ball State in a kind of a surprise beating Kent 27-20. We have Ohio 45, Buffalo 24. I had it as an over game. Central with a big upset, 35-22. Now, in this game, Central's running back, who's been out all year, actually played. He looked pretty good, although he had a fumble that was returned for a touchdown. Excuse me. But with the running back, this is the team I expected, this over team. So it just shows you get a guy injured, you get the wrong guy injured, and you don't look good, and you wonder what's going on. It's always the injury to the wrong player. Bowling Green 13-9. That was my first play of the week. I had Bowling Green plus 1.5. They get the win. Western sucks. Bowling Green, I expected more offense from. I don't know what happened there. It wasn't raining or anything. Rice 37-30 over UTEP. Now, I have Rice as an over team, so I'm not surprised at the 37. UTEP's more of a W. They don't score a lot and have no defense. So I was expecting Rice. I had them. I didn't play it, but I had them like, I'll take Rice, minus 3.5. I have minus 10. And then 48 was very confusing. So I didn't play the game over, but it was clearly an over, and it goes 67. See, that's what I mean. You got an over team with Rice, and you got a weak team with a weak defense in UTEP. That's what you're expecting, is it to go over. You don't know what to get out of UTEP, but you know Rice is going to score, but they don't have a defense. So UTEP should score a little. And the over only 48 in this game is a joke. And that's what you're looking for, right? A low total, the total will make the bet. So if it was 65, you can't bet it, but at 48, and that's what I look for, is those over teams in the 50s and the under teams. And that's why I always bet Georgia under. It's always, they're in the 50s, right? So if they're in the 50s, how the hell can it be an under? Wait a minute. Georgia doesn't give up a lot of points. It's 56 could go under 62, and it wins every time because that number is too high. So that's a key thing. And then Coastal Carolina wins yesterday, 35-28. Again, another over game. It goes 63, which was the number, but in teaser world, we win. And that's what you expect. McCall, he's a great quarterback. Bryce on App State's a great quarterback. So I got two good quarterbacks. Bryce from App State is a transfer from Clemson. So when you make your decision to take Ugliabli, and here's Bryce, and Bryce is 20 times better. I mean, and then you'll hear like, oh, we're going to draft Ugliabli. And you're like, what the hell? That's like drafting Trevor Lawrence. What are you doing? Why would you draft that guy ahead of these other guys? That's what always kills. This McCall should be a first-round draft pick. He'll go in the 5th round like Zappy because he played at Coastal Carolina. Like, are you watching these games? And that's what I have with the NFL, how they're just a bunch of idiots. And that's why the product sucks. You got Davis Mills quarterbacking Houston instead of, drafting McCall or Hooker or Rising. And you'll never hear it. Oh, it's Bryce Young. Like, fuck, have you seen Rising and Van Dyke and McCall or Spencer Sanders or all these guys? Like, what the hell? And then I'm hearing, which is really pissing me off, is the recruiting. If you're not a dual option quarterback, they're not recruiting you. Are you kidding me? Are you seeing these other quarterbacks, that pocket passers that are lighting it up? Come on, man. So they're a bunch of idiots running these things. So there you go, 35-28. Let's look at the injuries. So that's our line. Now, I looked at the injuries last night, and I saw Van Dyke playing, which I was happy about. I just want to know. I mean, at least give me if he's like Rising, he's questionable. Okay, fine. We won't play. We find another game. We don't play the game and then have to cancel it because, oh, well, we didn't know the guy was not playing. All right. So I'm just going to look at the bigger teams and the bigger names. Air Force, 2 wide receivers out. Alabama, a defensive lineman's out, and a wide receiver who I've never heard of. So nothing, no major injury there. I'll just talk if I see a play like Arizona State, a defensive lineman. It's good if I'm taking the over in the UCLA game. Great, I want the defense to be out. That's the other thing. If you're going to play overs and unders, if you're going to play an under and the running backs and receivers are out, that's great. If you're going to play an over, you want the defense to be injured. That's great. That's exactly what you want. How can Hayner be back with the broken ankle? So if Hayner's back, then I could understand that. Then you want to take Fresno State all day. They'll kill Hawaii with Hayner. I wouldn't take the 63 because I can't count on Hawaii to score. But if Hayner's actually playing, and we're going to check on this injury list, then I could see laying the 20. He'll put up 50 points. So Arizona State, Arkansas, nothing. Army, a running back, who knows? Baylor, a tight end, and a running back's questionable with the head. So you don't know what to do with these questionable guys. You assume they're going to play, especially if Baylor has a huge game with Oklahoma, so the kid's playing. And even that line I see like 57, I bet it at the 57. That's why I put my bets in Monday or as quick as I can Monday or Tuesday, because there's a perfect example. Baylor, the over-under was 57. Oklahoma with no defense, good offense. Baylor, good offense, as we know. And then it jumps to 61. Now, I know it's going to jump, but now once it hits that 61, it stops for some reason. It makes no sense. And it reminds me of gold where they're price fixing it down so people, the central bank, the Rothschilds and the Morgans can buy it at the low price. And it's gold. And I think the same thing here. Like it starts at 57, so the guy's buddies can bet it at 57, and then it goes to 61 miraculously and stops. Like, wait, if there's a lot of over betting, why would it stop at 61? Why wouldn't it go to 63, 64? So that's the curiosity. But it went to 61 and then it stopped. So that's what you're looking for there. Boise, nobody I know. BC, Phil Jerkovic, the quarterback's questionable. So they suck anyway, but he's a good quarterback. He's the guy from Notre Dame. But if he's out and the running back, Sinkfield. See, when I see that, I don't know if he's a starter or a bench guy. That's the problem. They're not highlighting him. So I don't know if Sinkfield's any good. Jerkovic, I have heard of as the quarterback from Notre Dame, and he's questionable. BYU, half the team's injured. Doubtful, out. So that maybe is for Boise. Cal, the wide receiver's questionable. Doesn't mean anything. Charlotte, I don't see Reynolds out. Cincinnati, nothing major. When you see offensive lineman, defensive lineman, a linebacker, they don't really matter unless it's Lawrence Taylor because they rotate the players. So they got 15 guys playing defense. Well, they got 11. So they got 20 guys playing defense, rotating them in. Maybe your star quarterback would be a thing, or your Aaron Donald would be a thing, but that's about it. Clemson, nothing much. A running back pace who I never heard of. And a defensive end's questionable. Who's going to play? It's at Notre Dame. Let's go. Nuki, just a running back, questionable. Florida, we don't care about. Florida State. So they're playing Miami, 7-point favorites. Their wide receivers out. The other wide receiver is questionable. The running back's questionable. Linebacker's out for the season. So what am I so excited with Florida State for? So that's good. Jake Hayner, quarterback out indefinitely with an ankle. So they have not updated Jake Hayner. He's still out. So I believe what you're saying. Obviously, the line moved. But I'm just showing you that sometimes you can't trust everything on here. That's why if you do hear it or the line moves, what's happening? Maybe this gets updated tomorrow. I don't know because he broke his ankle in the USC game, I think. Georgia. O-lineman is out. A linebacker is out. And a running back, Milton, who's okay. I know he plays a little. He's questionable with the groin. He'll be playing. A wide receiver broke his ankle, is out, and a DB is out. So they got some injuries, but nothing critical. Not the tight end. The tight end's name is Bowers. He's an All-American. He's a very strong player that Georgia would miss if he was out, but he's not out. So Georgia's okay. Let's go. Georgia Tech. Okay, the quarterback's probable Sims. As bad as they are, they've been playing better, and so it's good with the quarterback. That might be why that line moved. Yeah, Virginia Tech was 3.5, moved to 2.5 because the Georgia Tech quarterback's playing. So it's all the information's in the line, and the line moves. There's always a reason. Generally, it's an injury more than a bet. Nobody's betting Georgia Tech, Virginia Tech if I'm not betting it. Hawaii quarterback's out Cooper, but I don't think he was their starter. Houston, wide receivers out with the hand. A running back's out, but I don't know. As long as Mordecai's playing. Illinois, a running back, but not the key running back is out, and that's it. See, when they're out in September, I don't care because the team's been playing with it. Hey, Nick. Yeah, I'm going to get to that game. No fakes on here. Well, yeah, that would be. No, I'm just shocked by that. But I don't see your dollar sign, so I don't know. Is it really you? I think Georgia shows everyone they aren't screwing around this week. 10 hasn't played a defense like Georgia yet. Yeah. Yeah, I got some interesting news I'm going to get to on that as soon as I'm done with the injuries. Indiana, there we go. Okay, that's our secret code. I know it's you. I still can't believe that they got your name. Like Phil the Kill. I don't recall him too often, so I don't know. I'm sure he's real, but I'll know the new names, and then they may be like troublemakers, but I'm not seeing that here. Okay. So Indiana, a couple of wide receivers are out, which has been hurting them. They actually have 4 wide receivers out, and that's why they're not scoring. So you're trying to analyze Indiana, and you realize with 4, how many wide receivers do you got on the team? 10, and 4 of them are out. So that can't. The same thing with Iowa; they got 2 wide receivers out. That's what's been hurting them. They've had 4 wide receivers out. They're finally down to 2. They're both out. Iowa State, nothing. Kansas, Wilson, a wide receiver, suspended. Jay Daniels, we don't care. He's the initial quarterback, but Bean's been fine. So as long as Bean's not on this list, I have no problem with Kansas. Kansas State, Adrian Martinez is questionable, which we don't care about it. We're betting him on Howard, not Martinez. Kentucky defensive end out, linebacker out. Liberty. Now they're playing Arkansas. Now I'm confused by Liberty. You got quarterback Brewer doubtful. You got quarterback Bennett doubtful. And you got quarterback Salter out. And yet they got another quarterback, I guess, because they got 3 out. And yet they're still scoring a lot. So I don't know. These guys have been on the list for a while. So, again, be careful with Liberty. All right, the big game, LSU. O-lineman out, knee. Safety, mid-November leg, mid-November neck. So both safeties are out. They're not questionable. They're gone. Wide receiver back, probable. Every running back has got an Achilles, and then the rest have been out. A couple of quarterbacks were out before. So they got 4 secondary guys out. What does Alabama do? Throw the ball. So we'll get into that game too. But this is what you use the injuries for. If 2 safeties are out on LSU, and we know how Alabama throws the ball, that's it. I was just kidding, Phil. I just happened to see your name as a different guy, but not a problem. Just was saying as an example, Phil, he knows you weren't. Yeah, no, I'm just saying because it was actually Nick's name and it wasn't Nick. So that's what I mean. So no problem, Phil. LTAC, 2 quarterbacks one's out, one's questionable. And they're an over team, so be careful with them. Louisville, nothing. Marshall, a couple of receivers. Maryland, Tagliabue's brother is probable, so he's playing. I think they're at Nebraska. No, they're at Wisconsin. So Wisconsin's 4.5, 48. It's funny as Tagliabue is playing, and the line it went from 50 to 48. I don't know. Maryland is very hard to understand. So is Wisconsin. You think they have a good defense. Michigan State beats them 38 to 31. So this is what you're dealing with. Miami, Van Dyke is probable. There we go. Offensive lineman's questionable. Another offensive lineman's questionable. Now that's critical. We need them to protect Van Dyke, but they're questionable. They're not out. They'll play. It's a big game with Florida State. So definitely look at them. Michigan, who cares? Michigan State. Now here's Michigan State. Linebacker out, quarterback out, defensive end out, safety out, defensive end out, cornerback out. These guys are starters are out. So this is the problem you have. With that is this room. Well, not that Michigan State has a great defense, but Illinois can score a ton. I mean, that line went from 8 to 17 because of all this shit. So it's kind of killing the under on the Illinois game because Illinois is great defense. I think Illinois is the number 1 defense versus the number. I think it's like 8 points a game. I'll get into that. But so in my mind, it's almost like take Illinois because I don't think State can stop them. The question is State has a good quarterback. I like their quarterback and receivers. It's the only thing on the team that's any good. And they lost Walker to Seattle, and you see what he's doing at Seattle. He looks like a superstar there, and so they lost him. So now it's just passing. So they might be able to score in Illinois. Again, they scored 20 on Ohio State. They should have scored 10 on Michigan if they would have actually kicked a field goal on their own on the Michigan 5-yard line instead of going for it on 4th down and running up the middle to lose 3 yards. Again, wonderful play calling by these idiots. What the art of war does in football is you look for the weakness, and that was a great play call. You ran into 4 guys. I don't think that was the weakness on the play, and I don't think that was your strength, Michigan State. Your strength is your quarterback, so that play has to be either a screen pass or a crossing route. Michigan can't handle crossing routes. Ohio State shows that every year. So what kind of play calling was that? Running up the middle on a Michigan defense on 4th and 5, and you think, well, it's good. He's aggressive. He's going for it. He had no chance. So why would you waste? You could have tied the game at 10. It's a whole different game. So anyway, hard to bet idiots like that. Minnesota has got a wide receiver out and a running back out, but the quarterback is playing, and he's critical, Morgan. And the other running back, Ibrahim, is playing, so that's really all we care about. Ole Miss, wide receiver questionable. Missouri, a couple of wide receivers. One's out, one's questionable. And a D lineman. Navy, Lavati, the quarterback, out for the season, apparently with the knee. Although we keep seeing this out for the season, and we keep seeing the guys playing. So I know the Navy. So we assume the Navy quarterback's out here against Cincinnati, which makes this an under because they were throwing the ball very well. And I've been watching the games, and Alex told me, and they played SMU and Houston pretty good, but they were throwing the ball, and I don't think they have backup quarterbacks who can throw. Maybe they do. Maybe they'll surprise, but not against Cincinnati. They're too strong defensively. Let's see. Nebraska, who cares? Nevada. North Carolina, defensive back, linebacker out, running back Hood is doubtful. I love it. It's undisclosed. What does that mean? And then Barnes, an offensive lineman's questionable, and then the rest. So they're playing tomorrow against Virginia. I like them -1.5 against Virginia. I think that's doable. Northwestern Helsinki's questionable with a concussion. Notre Dame. So we got Clemson, Notre Dame. Notre Dame, O-lineman out. Tight end, 3 tight ends out, but not the big tight end. The All-American tight end's playing. The 3 backups are out. The quarterback we know is out. So Notre Dame, with the backup quarterback they're used to, with the tight end playing. So they're good, but I think Clemson beats them as soon as they go to the backup quarterback, which everybody knows should be the starter except for the coach. So he's obviously blackmailed by the quarterback. Ohio State, we don't care. Smith, everybody thinks Smith Najiba is this great receiver. I don't know. There's a lot of good receivers out there. Oklahoma, Gray, the running back's questionable. Another running back's questionable. So as long as Gabriel's playing, it's all I care about. Oak State. Now you've got 2 wide receivers, Bray and Johnson, questionable. And that's it. I mean, and a running back, Richardson, questionable. And they're playing a big game or they're playing my Kansas team. But this is nothing new. Bray's been questionable, and he played last week. I think they're a little bit pissed losing 48-0 to Kansas State, and Kansas has no defense. So if Kansas shuts out Oak State, I'll eat this table. That's not going to happen. So this is fine for Oak State. Oregon, wide receiver questionable. So nothing, too bad. Oregon State, Chase Nolan, questionable with the neck. Now, they play tonight. I like Washington in the game. No, I like the game over. So the backups come in, and he's not played too badly. All right, they lost a few running backs in early October, and a tight end. So they've been scoring more with the new quarterback. So we'll see. Although we do like Chase Nolan, but it's hard this year. They don't have the running back Baylor who went to the Packers. So sometimes it's hard to replace, and then they get 2 guys injured, 2 running backs. So we'll see. But I just stemmed over this game. And I said the only way I can play it's over, and the over is nice and low. Penn State, tight end out, who cares? Pitt, running back questionable. Okay, Purdue's got a lot of injuries. Well, no, running back probable. Safety's out, running back's out, wide receivers out. So you don't know what's going on with Purdue. They're a pretty good team, and the quarterback's playing. So he's always the key on a team like Purdue is the quarterback playing. The other guys, you don't even know if they're starters or not. Rutgers, the quarterback's questionable. I took Michigan here. They should just pound them, but I don't think they'll get over. South Florida, the quarterback Bohannon, the transfer from Mike Baylor, is out with the shoulder, so he's been out for a while. USC's got 1,000 injuries, and they're all questionable. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 7 questionables, linemen and linebackers, but not the quarterback and not the wide receiver or the running. And then they got a bunch of other outs. So they got like 20 guys out, but that was a lot of them are early and they're all playing and they look fine. SMU Mordecai probable. That's important. We need that for SMU. A couple of running backs questionable. Syracuse, their quarterback still questionable. Schrader, which is important. Their backup sucks. He threw a couple interceptions. That's killed us last week on our under. So Schrader, it just says he's questionable. So he's out. So we'll see what happens. They got a lot of defense hurt. So I don't know if they're still an under team. DB out for the season. DB out. DL out. Well, the DL is September. So if we look in October, they lost 2 DBs. So that's not really good for an under team to start losing the defensive side. All right, Tennessee. We got a DB. He was out October 3rd. So they played Alabama after. They have no injuries. Their superstar wide receiver is apparently playing. So will that make a difference? Tennessee or Texas, tight end and a wide receiver are just questionable. They're playing a big game also with Kansas State, so they'll be playing. It all becomes to the opponent. A&M, they suck. King's questionable. The one quarterback, the other quarterback. Johnson is out. King's terrible. The key there is the running back, who I don't see. So the running back's good. TCU, nothing. That's good. UTEP quarterback is questionable. Texas Tech, running back out. Linebacker out. That's it for recent. I expect them to get slaughtered by TCU. UTSA, nothing. Toledo, Troy, Tulane, they're fine. Tulsa, they're fine. UCLA, all they have is one guy. The defensive lineman is out, and he's been out for a couple of weeks. That's it. They're amazing. They don't have any injuries. Lou Lafayette, Fields is questionable. Their quarterback, but I don't know if he's their starter. Vegas, Brumfield, their quarterback, concussion. Be careful with that. That's the difference. They've been scoring, but with Brumfield out, they're not. So he's questionable. Utah, here we go. Thomas, All-American running back, questionable. Rising quarterback, questionable. And then Kincaid, the real star tight end, questionable. So these three guys are all questionable. So I think it's baked in. They're all playing. They're not doubtful. They're not out. With Rising, you got to wait till 5 minutes before the game to see if he's playing. That's the problem. So Utah, all we can do is wait till Rising plays. Unless we hear news he's playing, we have to assume we don't know what we can do with him and just, so maybe lay away from Utah for a while. Utah State, their quarterback, Legis, is questionable. The other quarterback's also questionable. And their starter's out for the season. So Legis we like, but he's got the concussion. This concussion protocol is ridiculous. Virginia, their quarterback, Armstrong's questionable with the leg, which is why we took North Carolina, because Virginia doesn't have their quarterback, or he's hurt his leg. Even if he plays, how effective is he? Another running back's doubtful, another running back's out. So Virginia's pretty banged up. VTech, bunch of nobodies. Wake, I don't see Hartman on the list. Washington, I don't see anybody important on the list. Washington State, a DB's questionable. That's okay. And then a couple of wide receivers. Again, we like Washington State under, so we don't care if they don't have wide receivers because that's going to keep the score down on Washington State side, which is what we want when you play Washington State under. West Virginia, a tight end's out, a running back's questionable. Wisconsin, the whole team is on the list. That's their problem, and that's Wyoming. So that's what we got. Phil, I find the drop-off between first string and backup to be negligible in college, unlike the NFL where it's huge. Unless it's a quarterback or a superstar player, The backups in college seem to love the chance to play. Well, I agree, except if you watch the Utah game, there was a big difference between Rising and the backup, and there was a big difference between Van Dyke and the backup. So in Kansas's stake, yes, you're fine. But they're bringing Bean, and they still score 45 points a game. So I agree with you there. In some of these college, like some of them now, if Georgia lost a quarterback, or if Tennessee lost a quarterback, you're screwed. Alabama lost their quarterback, and they were hurting too. So I would say it's up to the offense. Like Kansas's offense is apparently very good, where me and you could walk in and play quarterback, and we'd still score 40 points. So it really, I agree with you. I think they're not as bad, but I'm not going to bet Utah. What's Utah? Utah 17.5, 67. That's a bet with Rising. It's not without Rising. I am not laying 67, even though Arizona scores 40 a game. However, if Rising plays, it's a lock over. But again, I can't bet the game, and then he doesn't play. He pulls what he did last week. Obviously, his leg's bothering him. Let's just let it heal up, and they should still beat Arizona. But I don't know. Arizona beat somebody pretty. I think they beat Washington like 48-35. That's why I love the game over if Rising plays, but his backup wasn't that good. I do agree they'd like to get out there. But look at Michigan. They had the quarterback last year, and they were rolling, and then they switched quarterbacks. The guy does hurt his leg, but they switched it before that. And they're terrible this year. Michigan is not nearly the team they were last year. Now they're just a running team, right? And McCann, this backup comes in. He can't throw. He kind of, runs a little or throws these little 5-yard passes. But if you need a 30-yarder, if you need a touchdown against Ohio State and you need him to throw 20-yard slants, you never do it. Where the other guy did, that's how they beat Ohio State. When you get into Georgia, they had no chance. But if this guy was the quarterback against Georgia, they would have got shut out. So that's what you have. But I agree with you. Normally the backups are okay. When I think of the Miami game and their O-line mostly out, the starting O-line is so bad. DVD will be running for his life, starters or no starters. Well, we'll see. You're expecting the backups are questionable, so they could be playing. And then they'll change the play calling to a little more running and more short passes, like what a Brady would do when he faced Seattle, where they're going to be there in 2 seconds. He got rid of the ball in 2 seconds, so it's something that they'll understand going into the game. But don't be surprised if the offensive line plays against it's Florida State and they're a home dog. So I think with Van Dyke, they have a good chance here. All right, let's get into the game. So I'm going to talk about Georgia, Tennessee first, as I promised. The line, I got Georgia 8.5. Can you believe this total is 66.5 in a Georgia game? I don't care if they're playing the Philadelphia Eagles. 66.5, are you kidding me? I initially, with no line, said this is going to be an over game because Georgia's defense has been giving up points, and Tennessee obviously scored, but there ain't no fucking way I'm going over 60 in a Georgia game when it's 66, and I can go under 72. On the other hand, here's how I see the game playing out. Georgia's going to run it down their throat. Tennessee does not have that defense that can stop that. They got the tight end. Their quarterback is fine. Their point will be to keep the ball away from Hooker. And when Hooker has the ball, he's going to have about 2 seconds before that Georgia defense is all over him. And Tennessee does not play Georgia well. It was 41-17 last year. Now, granted, Georgia with the great defense, but it was Hooker, and he got killed by him. Not that Alabama didn't kill him also, but there's a big difference in Georgia's defense and Alabama's defense this year. I think Georgia wins the game. I'm going to lay the 2.5 or 2 points or whatever. This is one where I can wait because it could go down to 7.5 because of the publicity of Tennessee. But Hooker's not going to stand back and light it up against this defense. They're pissed off because who's number one? Tennessee. Why is Tennessee number one? Oh, they beat Alabama. Big, okay, great. But Georgia's got a very good team. They haven't lost. And let's not forget, Georgia beat Oregon 49-3. So if we go into matchups, and they handled that Oregon team 49-3. Oregon's a passing team, aren't they? Don't they look a lot like Tennessee? They got Bo Nix, who apparently learned how to quarterback this year. Oregon scores 40 a game. It averages 40 a game, even though they got 3 points on Georgia. So they're really averaging 55 a game. Let's say 50. And they just killed them. I mean, it wasn't even close. So I like Georgia at home to win the game. And I only have to lay 2.5 with Georgia. Did I think of Tennessee as a dog a little bit for about a minute? And I just think Georgia's just too – they're just going to run it down their throat, keep the ball away from Hooker. There's no way this gets over. Under 72, I'm like drooling with that one going, how do you not play Georgia in an under 72 game? So my free pick's Georgia laying the 2 with a little asterisk of, well, maybe the under 72 is good too. I don't see – this is not Alabama's defense, and this is not Bryce Young going to light up Tennessee. Georgia doesn't do that. They methodically just kick your ass. They run it down your throat, and the defense is in the quarterback's face. Tennessee doesn't run the ball. So let's go to my little statistics to break the game down a little bit more. Hey, why does it do that? I hate when I click on my tab and it closes it. It's like, what the fuck? Don't ever buy Google Chrome. It's a piece of crap. Plus, I don't have Excel on it, so I got to use this Chrome sheet stuff, which really sucks. I'm an Excel user since it was Lotus 123, and I would never use the sheets. Or I'm using it wrong, or I'm not using it as full as it should be, but that's crazy. All right, hold on. It's coming up. This is the other problem I hate. It goes to the cloud, which I don't want it. I want it on my C drive. Come on. Lowest file. All right. All right, so when we look at it, Tennessee scores 49 a game but gives up 21. They get 553 yards, 353 passing, and 200 running. Georgia scores 42 a game, gives up 10. So they're having a bad year. They're giving up 10 points a game. Stupid file. All right, so Georgia scores 42, gives up 10. They still get 530 yards a game. They get 328 passing, 202. So there's not a big difference. There's a 20-yard difference offensively. Now, again, that's normally your opponent, right? So they get 500, but when you get them into a big game like this, they're not going to get 500 yards on offense. So what you're looking at, the critical difference is Tennessee gives up 21 a game, Georgia gives up 10 a game. And that's really the whole difference of what do I say here is defense wins. And there's nothing more obvious than that in this game. When we look at, I just wanted to get Illinois gives up 9 points a game, because I was talking about them. So